Success Secret Part 7. Take responsibility for your life. Introduction. Welcome back to Psychology of Success. Before we begin today's lesson, take a moment to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Every week, we share powerful lessons on success, discipline, psychology, and personal growth to help you become the best version of yourself. If you're ready to stop making excuses and start building the life you deserve, subscribe now and join our growing community. Now let's begin. Imagine two people facing the exact same storm. Both lose their jobs. Both struggle financially. Both feel disappointed. One person spends every day blaming the economy, other people, and bad luck. The other asks one simple question: what can I do next? That single question changes everything. One person stays trapped in blame. The other begins building a better future. Today, you'll discover one of the greatest success secrets. The moment you take responsibility for your life is the moment you begin to take back your power. Point 1. The man in the mirror. There was once a businessman who seemed to have every excuse for why his life wasn't improving. He blamed his boss. He blamed his childhood. He blamed the government. He blamed the economy. Every conversation ended the same way. It isn't my fault. One morning, after another disappointing day, he looked into the mirror. For the first time, he asked himself a different question. What if I've been waiting for everyone else to change while refusing to change myself? That question changed his life. He stopped complaining. He learned new skills. He improved his habits. He accepted responsibility for the things he could control. His life didn't improve overnight. But it improved because he changed. The mirror became a reminder that real change begins within. Whenever you're tempted to blame everything around you, remember the man in the mirror. Sometimes the greatest breakthrough starts with an honest conversation with yourself. Point 2. The two brothers. There were two brothers who grew up in a difficult home. Both experienced hardship. Both faced the same challenges. Years later, one brother became successful. The other struggled. A reporter asked each of them the same question. Why did your life turn out this way? The successful brother answered. Because of where I came from, I decided I wanted something different. The struggling brother answered. Because of where I came from, I never had a chance. They experienced the same past. But they chose different responses. Your past influences you. It does not have to define you. You may not be responsible for everything that happened to you. But you can choose how you respond today. That choice shapes your future. Point 3. The captain of the ship. Imagine a ship caught in a violent storm. The waves are enormous. The wind is fierce. The captain cannot control the weather. He cannot stop the storm. But he can control how he steers the ship. Life is much the same. You cannot control every challenge that comes your way. You cannot control every setback. You cannot control every person's actions. But you can control your decisions, your attitude, your effort, your response. The captain who keeps steering has a chance to reach the shore. The one who gives up allows the storm to decide his future. Take the wheel of your own life. Don't hand it to circumstances. Point 4. The stonemason. A traveler once met three stonemasons working at the same construction site. He asked the first, "What are you doing?" The man replied, "I'm breaking rocks." He asked the second, "What are you doing?" The second answered, "I'm earning a living." Then he asked the third, "What are you doing?" The third smiled and said, "I'm helping build a great cathedral that will inspire people for generations." All three were doing the same work. But only one saw purpose in it. Responsibility is not only about accepting challenges. It is also about choosing the meaning you give to your work and your life. People with purpose are often more resilient because they understand why they keep moving forward. Transition. In the next section, we'll explore more powerful stories, including the farmer who stopped complaining, the broken arrow, the sculptor and the stone, the choice between excuses and action, How responsibility creates freedom. Because success begins the moment you stop asking, "Who's to blame?" and start asking, "What can I do now?" Point 5. The farmer who stopped complaining. There once lived a farmer in a small village. Every morning before sunrise he walked through his fields. But instead of appreciating what he had, he always found something to complain about. If the rain came, he complained there was too much water. If the sun shined brightly, he complained the heat was unbearable. If the wind blew, he blamed the weather for damaging his crops. If there was no wind, he blamed the still air. Nothing was ever enough. One day, an elderly neighbor quietly watched him complain for nearly an hour. When the farmer finally finished, the old man smiled and asked, "My friend, if every season is your enemy, when will you ever plant in peace?" The farmer laughed. "I can't control the weather." The old man nodded. "Exactly. So why are you giving your energy to something you cannot control?" Those words stayed in the farmer's mind. The next morning, something changed. The rain still fell. The wind still blew. The sun still rose. But instead of complaining, he asked, "What can I do with today's conditions?" When heavy rain arrived, he improved his drainage. When the sun became intense, he watered earlier in the morning. When pests appeared, he searched for solutions instead of excuses. Month after month, his harvest improved. People in the village assumed he had become lucky. But the farmer knew the truth. His success began the day he stopped blaming the weather and started taking responsibility for his response. Life works the same way. There will always be storms. There will always be obstacles. There will always be things outside your control. The question is not whether life will be difficult. The question is whether you will spend your energy complaining about the problem or working toward the solution. Successful people don't waste their lives wishing reality were different. They ask, "What can I do next?" That simple question changes everything. Point 6. The broken arrow. A wise teacher once gathered his students and held up an arrow. He snapped it in half with his hands. The students looked confused. Then he picked up another arrow. Instead of breaking it, he placed it on the bow and aimed it toward the sky. He turned to his students and said, "This arrow has a purpose because it is pointed in the right direction." Then he held up the broken arrow again. It no longer matters how beautiful this arrow once was. It cannot reach its destination because it has lost its direction. The teacher paused before continuing. Many people spend years blaming the wind for missing the target. But the real problem is that they never chose a direction. Those words filled the room with silence. How many people wake up every morning without a clear purpose? How many drift through life, hoping success will somehow find them? Responsibility begins with choosing a direction. You don't need to know every step. But you do need to decide where you're aiming. Without direction, effort is scattered. With direction, even small daily actions begin to move you closer to your goals. The teacher smiled and said one final sentence. The wind may slow an arrow, but only a lack of direction prevents it from ever reaching the target. Remember this whenever life becomes difficult. Do not spend all your energy blaming the wind. Aim your life with purpose. Then keep moving forward. Point 7. The sculptor and the stone. Many years ago, a traveler visited the workshop of a famous sculptor. In one corner of the workshop stood a massive block of marble. The traveler asked, "How do you turn an ordinary stone into a masterpiece?" The sculptor smiled. "I don't create the masterpiece." The traveler looked puzzled. The sculptor walked toward the stone and gently placed his hand on it. "The masterpiece is already inside. My responsibility is simply to remove everything that doesn't belong." Day after day, the sculptor chipped away at the stone. Sometimes the progress was barely noticeable. Sometimes entire days passed with only a few small changes. But he never stopped. Months later, a magnificent statue stood where the rough stone had once been. The traveler stared in amazement. The sculptor quietly said, "Greatness was always there. It simply required patience, discipline, and responsibility." The lesson applies to every one of us. Inside you are abilities that may still be hidden, potential that has not yet been revealed, dreams that are waiting to be brought to life. But they cannot appear on their own. Every day you must chip away at fear, at excuses, at laziness, at doubt, at negative habits. Success is not about becoming someone completely different. It is about becoming who you were capable of being all along. And that begins the moment you accept responsibility for your own growth. Every small improvement is another piece of unnecessary stone removed. One day, people will admire the finished masterpiece. They may call you talented. They may call you lucky. But only you will know how many days you spent doing the quiet work that no one else could see. The masterpiece wasn't created in one day. It was revealed one decision at a time. Success Secret Part 7, continued. The story of J.K. Rowling, when rejection isn't the end. There was a time when millions of people around the world had never heard the name J.K. Rowling. Long before her books inspired readers across generations, her life looked very different. She faced financial hardship. She struggled as a single mother. She has spoken publicly about going through a difficult period in which she felt that many parts of her life had fallen apart. Yet she held on to one dream. She wanted to become a writer. She spent countless hours writing a story about a young boy who discovers he is a wizard. When she finished the manuscript, she believed in it. But believing in something does not always mean others will believe in it immediately. Publisher after publisher rejected her work. Imagine opening another rejection letter. Imagine wondering if your dream would ever become reality. Many people would have stopped. Many would have told themselves, maybe everyone is right. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I should give up. But she didn't. She kept trying until one publisher finally decided to give her manuscript a chance. That manuscript became the first book in the Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone series. The books went on to become one of the best-selling series in history. Think about what would have happened if she had accepted rejection as the final answer. The world would have lost one of its most beloved stories. The lesson is clear. Rejection is not always a verdict. Sometimes it is simply part of the journey. Your responsibility is not to control how everyone responds. Your responsibility is to keep improving your work and continue moving forward. The story of Michael Jordan, turning disappointment into determination. Many people know Michael Jordan as one of the greatest basketball players of all time. But fewer people know the story behind his success. As a teenager, he was deeply disappointed after not making the varsity basketball team during one stage of his high school career. He later described how painful that experience was. Instead of allowing disappointment to define him, he made a decision. He would work harder. He practiced relentlessly. He focused on improving every weakness. He didn't spend months blaming the coach. He didn't convince himself that basketball wasn't for him. He accepted that he had more work to do. Years later, he became known for his relentless work ethic. One of his most famous reflections captures this mindset. I've failed over and over and over again in my life. And that is why I succeed. Those words remind us of something important. Greatness is rarely built on comfort. It is built on consistent effort after disappointment. Every setback became another reason for him to improve. Every obstacle became another opportunity to grow. That is what taking responsibility looks like. The story of Nelson Mandela, choosing your response. There are moments in history that remind us of the incredible strength of the human spirit. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison. 27 years. Many people would expect someone in that situation to leave prison filled with bitterness. Yet when he was released, he spoke about the importance of reconciliation rather than revenge. This did not erase the suffering he experienced. But it demonstrated an extraordinary principle. We cannot always choose what happens to us. We can choose how we respond. Mandela understood that allowing anger to control the rest of his life would be another form of imprisonment. Instead, he chose a different path. That choice required remarkable courage and responsibility. Whether in leadership, work, or personal growth, this lesson remains powerful. Your response to hardship often shapes your future more than the hardship itself. The lesson for your own life. Perhaps your challenge is different. Maybe you have been rejected. Maybe you've failed an exam. Maybe your business has struggled. Maybe you've been told your dreams are unrealistic. Those experiences are painful. But they do not have to define the rest of your story. Every person you've heard about today faced moments when giving up would have been easier. The difference is that they continued. Not because success was guaranteed, but because they chose to take responsibility for what they could control. Their effort. Their attitude. Their preparation. Their willingness to keep going. One decision rarely changes a life overnight. But thousands of responsible decisions, made consistently over time, can transform an ordinary life into an extraordinary one. Perhaps the story people admire about your life will not begin with your success. Perhaps it will begin with the moment you decided to stop making excuses and start taking responsibility. The story of Thomas Edison, responsibility before success. Whenever people hear the name Thomas Edison, they often think of the electric light bulb. What many people don't see are the years of work behind that achievement. Edison spent countless hours experimenting. Many attempts did not produce the result he wanted. Imagine working day after day. Testing ideas. Changing designs. Trying again. Most people would eventually say, "This isn't working." But Edison looked at failure differently. He treated every unsuccessful attempt as information. Each experiment taught him something. Each mistake eliminated another wrong path. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" he asked, "What can this teach me?" That simple shift made all the difference. Success is rarely about getting everything right the first time. It is about accepting responsibility for learning every time something goes wrong. Imagine if Edison had stopped after the first setback. Or the 10th. Or the 100th. History might have looked very different. Great achievements often belong to people who keep working long after others have stopped. The lesson is not that you must never fail. The lesson is that every failure carries a responsibility. Learn from it. Improve because of it. Then move forward. The story of Walt Disney, believing when others didn't. Before Walt Disney built one of the world's most recognized entertainment companies, life was far from easy. Early in his career, he experienced business failures. Projects didn't always succeed. Money was often scarce. There were moments when his dreams seemed impossible. Yet he continued creating. He continued imagining. He continued building. Many people around him doubted his vision. But he understood something important. If he stopped believing in his dreams simply because others could not see it, the dream would never become reality. Responsibility sometimes means protecting your vision even when no one else understands it. There will always be people who question your goals. Some will criticize. Some will laugh. Some will tell you it cannot be done. You cannot control their opinions. But you can control whether you continue. Dreams survive when responsibility is stronger than doubt. The story of the mountain climber. A young climber stood at the foot of a towering mountain. Looking up, the peak seemed impossible to reach. An older climber noticed his fear. He walked over and asked, "What are you looking at?" "The top," the young man replied. "It seems too far." The older climber smiled. "That is your problem." The young man looked confused. "You are trying to climb the whole mountain in your mind. Instead, climb the next step." Those words changed everything. The young climber stopped worrying about the entire journey. He focused on the next step. Then another. Then another. Hours later, he reached the summit. Success often works the same way. People become overwhelmed because they focus on the entire journey instead of today's responsibility. Today's responsibility might be reading 10 pages, saving a small amount of money, practicing one skill, recording one video, making one phone call. Small responsibilities, repeated consistently, create extraordinary results. Don't let the size of your dream stop you. Simply take the next step. The story of the clockmaker. There once lived an old clockmaker whose clocks were known throughout the country for their precision. One day, a young apprentice asked, "How do you build something so perfect?" The old man smiled. "I don't focus on finishing the entire clock. I focus on placing each tiny gear exactly where it belongs." The apprentice watched as the old man spent hours working on parts most customers would never even see. Finally, the apprentice asked, "Does every tiny detail really matter?" The old man answered, "Greatness is simply thousands of small responsibilities completed with excellence." That lesson applies to every dream. People admire the finished result. They rarely see the countless small decisions behind it. The successful student is built by daily study. The successful athlete is built by daily practice. The successful entrepreneur is built by daily discipline. Extraordinary lives are built through ordinary responsibilities completed consistently. The power of choosing action. Right now, somewhere in the world, two people are thinking about the same dream. One keeps waiting. Waiting for confidence. Waiting for perfect timing. Waiting for better circumstances. The other starts today. The first person hopes. The second person acts. Months later, one still has excuses. The other has experience. Years later, one still has dreams. The other has results. Action is the bridge between intention and achievement. Responsibility means building that bridge one decision at a time. Don't wait for life to become easier. Become stronger. Don't wait until you feel ready. Prepare and begin. Don't wait for someone else to change your future. Take responsibility for writing your own story. Because in the end, your life will not be remembered for the excuses you made. It will be remembered for the choices you had the courage to make. Every sunrise gives you another opportunity. Another chance to improve. Another chance to grow. Another chance to become the person you were created to be. Take that chance. Start today. The future is waiting, not for your excuses, but for your actions. Success Secret Part 7, continued. The story of the bamboo builder. There was once a master builder who was known throughout the country for constructing the strongest bamboo bridges. People traveled from distant villages just to watch him work. One day, a young apprentice asked if he could learn the secret. The master smiled and agreed. The next morning, they walked into a forest. The apprentice expected to begin building immediately. Instead, the master spent hours carefully selecting bamboo. He rejected one stalk after another. "This one is too weak. This one has hidden cracks. This one will not last." The apprentice became impatient. "Master," he said, "we have wasted the entire morning and built nothing." The old man looked at him and replied, "No, today we have already begun building." The apprentice was confused. The master continued, "A weak foundation creates a weak bridge. If I rush this step, people may one day lose their lives because of my impatience." Several weeks later, the bridge was completed. It withstood heavy rains, powerful winds, and countless travelers. Years passed. The bridge remained strong. The apprentice finally understood. Success is built long before anyone notices it. The decisions nobody applauds often determine the results everyone admires. In your own life, responsibility means preparing when nobody is watching. Studying when nobody is forcing you. Practicing when nobody is cheering. Improving when nobody is paying attention. Because one day, your hidden discipline becomes visible success. The story of the father's watch. A father owned an old wristwatch that had belonged to his own father. It wasn't expensive. It wasn't made of gold. But it represented something priceless. Before his son left home to begin his adult life, the father handed him the watch. "My father gave this to me," he said. "He told me that every second is a gift." The son smiled politely. Years passed. He chased comfort instead of purpose. He delayed important decisions. He constantly said, "I'll start tomorrow." One day, he returned home. His father was much older now. The son noticed the watch sitting on the table. Its hands had stopped moving. Quietly, the father said, "The watch can be repaired. But time cannot. Those words struck the son deeply. He realized he had spent years waiting for the perfect moment. The perfect job. The perfect opportunity. The perfect circumstances. Meanwhile, life had continued moving forward. That very day, he made a decision. He stopped postponing his dreams. He enrolled in school. Started his business. Improved his health. Repaired broken relationships. Years later, people admired his success. But he always remembered the silent lesson of the broken watch. Responsibility means respecting the time you have been given. Because every day you delay the life you want is one day you can never recover. The story of the fisherman. In a small coastal village lived an old fisherman. Every morning, before sunrise, he prepared his boat. One day, a young man asked, "How do you always know where to find fish?" The fisherman smiled. "I don't." The young man looked confused. "I simply prepare every day. Some days I return with a full boat. Some days I return with very little. But if I never leave the shore, I guarantee I catch nothing." The young man laughed. Years later, those words came back to him. How many people never leave the shore? How many dreams remain dreams because people refuse to begin? Fear keeps them waiting. Comfort keeps them waiting. Excuses keep them waiting. But opportunities are rarely found by people standing safely on the shore. Responsibility often begins with launching the boat. Taking the first step. Accepting uncertainty. Moving forward anyway. The man who planted trees. There once lived an elderly man who spent every day planting trees. Children passing by laughed at him. "Why are you planting trees? You'll never live long enough to enjoy their shade." The old man smiled warmly. "My grandfather planted trees that sheltered me. My father planted trees that sheltered others. Now it is my turn." The children were silent. The old man continued digging. Years later, travelers rested beneath those very trees. Families gathered there. Children played there. Birds built nests there. The old man never saw all of it. But his responsibility created blessings that continued long after he was gone. True success is not only about what you achieve for yourself. It is also about what you leave behind for others. The greatest leaders build people. The greatest teachers build minds. The greatest parents build character. The greatest entrepreneurs create opportunities. Ask yourself today, what am I planting that future generations will benefit from? Because responsibility is bigger than today. It reaches into tomorrow. The final lesson before the next chapter. Every morning you are given something priceless. 24 new hours. No one receives more. No one receives less. The successful person and the unsuccessful person both begin the day with the same amount of time. The difference lies in responsibility. One chooses discipline. The other chooses delay. One accepts ownership. The other searches for excuses. One builds the future. The other waits for the future. Never underestimate the power of daily choices. Your future is not created by one extraordinary day. It is created by thousands of ordinary days lived with purpose. One responsible decision may seem small. But repeated over months and years, those decisions become a remarkable life. Remember this. You cannot change yesterday. Tomorrow has not yet arrived. But today is completely in your hands. Take responsibility for today. And one day, you'll look back with gratitude because today was the day everything began. Success Secret Part 7, continued. The story of the man who blamed everything. There was once a man who always believed the world was against him. If he failed an exam, it was because the questions were unfair. If he lost an opportunity, it was because others were favored. If he made a mistake, it was because someone didn't explain things properly. In his mind, nothing was ever his responsibility. One day, he visited an old mentor who listened quietly to him complain for nearly an hour. When the man finished speaking, expecting agreement, the mentor said nothing at first. Instead, he placed 2 cups on the table. One cup was full of water. The other was empty. The mentor asked him, Which cup is responsible for the empty one? The man laughed. That makes no sense. The empty cup is just empty. The mentor nodded slowly. Exactly. But your life is the same. You keep pointing at everything outside you while ignoring what is inside you. The man frowned. The mentor continued. As long as you believe everything outside you is responsible for your situation, you will never change your life. That moment hit him deeply. For the first time, he realized something uncomfortable. He had spent years explaining his life instead of improving it. From that day forward, he began changing small habits. He stopped blaming circumstances. He started asking better questions. Slowly, his life began to shift. Not because the world changed, but because he changed his response to the world. The story of the student who stopped making excuses. A student once struggled badly in school. Every exam result disappointed him. Every failure came with a list of excuses. I didn't have time. The questions were too hard. The teacher didn't explain well. One evening, his older sister asked him a simple question. If all your excuses are true, why are some students still succeeding? He had no answer. That question stayed in his mind for days. He began observing successful students. They had the same exams, the same teachers, the same school, but different results. The difference was not the system. It was their responsibility. They studied consistently. They asked questions. They corrected mistakes. They took ownership of their learning. The student finally realized something important. Excuses explain failure, but they never create success. From that moment, he stopped focusing on why things were difficult. He started focusing on how to improve. His performance slowly began to change. Not overnight, but through responsibility. The story of the unfinished bridge. In a small town, engineers began building a bridge that would connect two communities. At first, everything went well. Foundations were laid. Materials arrived. Progress was visible. But over time, problems began. Workers blamed delays on weather. Suppliers blamed shortages. Managers blamed planning. Everyone pointed outward. No one took ownership. Eventually, construction stopped completely. Years passed. The incomplete bridge became a symbol of failure. One day, a new engineer visited the site. He looked at the abandoned structure and asked a simple question. Who is responsible for finishing this? Silence filled the room. Everyone had an excuse. But no one had ownership. The new engineer said something powerful. Responsibility is not about blame. It is about rebuilding what has been left undone. He reorganized the team, clarified roles, removed confusion, focused on solutions instead of excuses. Slowly, construction resumed. Months later, the bridge was completed. And for the first time in years, two communities were connected again. The lesson is simple. When everyone avoids responsibility, progress stops. When someone accepts responsibility, progress begins again. The story of the young man and the choice. A young man once stood at a crossroads in life. One path represented responsibility. It required discipline, effort, and patience. The other path represented comfort. It offered excuses, delay, and avoidance. He asked an old traveler, "Which path should I take?" The traveler replied, "That depends on what you want your future to look like." The young man said, "I want success." The traveler nodded. "Then choose the path where you take responsibility, even when it is difficult." The young man hesitated. The responsible path looked harder. The comfortable path looked easier. But then he asked one final question. "What happens if I choose the easy path?" The traveler smiled sadly. "You will arrive somewhere, but not where you wanted to go." That answer stayed with him. He chose responsibility. It was not easy. There were challenges. There were setbacks. There were moments of doubt. But over time, his life began to change. Because every responsible decision he made moved him closer to the future he wanted. Final message of Part 7. At this point in your journey, one truth should be clear. Your life is not controlled by everything around you. Your life is shaped by how you respond to what happens around you. Responsibility is not about blaming yourself for everything. It is about focusing your energy on what you can control. Your choices. Your habits. Your mindset. Your effort. Your discipline. If you take responsibility, you gain power. If you avoid responsibility, you lose it. Every successful person eventually learns this truth. Not because life is easy, but because they decide to stop giving away their power. So today, ask yourself one honest question. What in my life am I blaming that I should be taking responsibility for? The answer to that question may be the beginning of your transformation. Closing thought. You cannot control everything that happens to you. But you can always control who you become because of it. And that is where real success begins. Master your mind. Transform your life. Thank you for watching Psychology of Success. If this video brought you value, subscribe, like, and share it with someone who is committed to growth. Remember, success is not something you find, it's something you build, one decision at a time. Because the future belongs to those who take action today. Master your mind. Transform your life. I'll see you in the next lesson. I wish see you in Part 8.